I am Eric Barnes with the Daily Memphian, and welcome to this edition of the Extra Podcast. Today, very pleased to welcome Jeff Kollath, the Executive Director of the Stax Museum of American Soul. Jeff, how are you?
Doing all right. How are you, Eric?
And I can see if you're watching on video, it looks like you're in the museum, unless that's
I am. It's my friend Isaac Hayes over my left shoulder here.
Yeah.
Standing next to the Mississippi River way back when.
Yeah.
We're actually flipping our temporary gallery around and getting ready for a new show that's going to open when we reopen sometime in June. It's photography from this guy named Joel Brodsky, who did a lot of the album cover photography and some marketing shots. So some really great shots of Isaac, David Porter, staple singers, and Booker T and the MGs. And so we're working on that today. So decided it was a good time as any to do this interview with a friend here with me.
Well, that's great. And so when that exhibit gets into, the whole question of, you all have obviously been closed through this. What is your timeline and all that for reopening?
Barring a setback outside of our control, it will probably be sometime in mid-June, looking at the week of Father's Day. We will want to try to do some to use a term from the automotive industry, some test and tune in the last couple of weekends of June, just to get our new processes, implemented, get the staff comfortable with being here, working with guests again. I mean, as I've told them since, for the last couple of months, it's like we will reopen and we will come back, but it will be a different museum than what you left on March 18th. And so I think it's a struggle that I think all of our museums and tourist attractions in the city have had to deal with, but I think we're up for the challenge. We needed just a little bit more time to do some work here, and we wanted to make sure that some of our friends, Graceland, Rock and Soul, and some of the other institutions in town had successful relaunches before we decided to jump back into.
And what sort of, are you going to have limits on the number of people? Are you going to have masks required? Are you going to do temperature checks? What are the kind of steps and precautions you're going to put in place?
So typically, if you come to the museum, it's been you come in, if there's a film just about to start, you can go right in, watch the film, or if you come in the middle, you can wait. We're actually going to put those on a timed schedule for the first time. And so try to run about every 30 minutes. The film runs about 17, 18 minutes. So we're giving ourselves a little more than 10 minutes to do some cleaning in the gallery. So that includes sanitizing chairs and such. Right now, it's actually the timing of this, for a lot of reasons, hasn't been great, but we had just expanded our theater. We had just made it so that we could fit in about 70 seats instead of our usual 50 to 55, but now we'll be down to about 20 to 25 seats in the theater, social distance between those. The city's plan is pretty good, and they've answered some questions that I always had, which was, if you come in as a family of four, do you have to sit 6 feet apart from your kids and from your spouse? And no, you treat families and you treat couples as units, so one unit. So we'll do some pairings of 2 and 4 chairs and that sort of thing. So it's going to be a big change, I think, for us. But that's really how we're going to stem the sort of the flow of our guests. We are a one-way museum in a lot of ways, but we'll have some signage and things on the floor to encourage people to keep going in the right direction, eliminate some backtracking. But the big change will be the front door will be predominantly for entry, and then the side door off of our gift shop will be exclusively for exit, just so that we eliminate people walking past each other and such as much as we can. Staff will be required to wear masks. We will highly, highly, highly recommend that our guests wear masks, but I'm not totally sure that we're going to require it. Temperature checks we will probably not do, at least that's what we're thinking about right now. But that's still under discussion, because the other part of it is unlike other museums and cultural institutions, we have a school and a music academy and folks that don't have anything to do with tourists here on campus every day. So we have to come up with something that fits all parts of the organization, but obviously we're sort of the special part of the organization that deals with people from all over the world.
In a normal 3-month period, or I don't know, annually, how many visitors does the museum have?
So for the first time as an organization in fiscal year 19, so July 1 of 18 to June 30 of 19, we reached over 60,000 visitors through the front door. And we were on track to beat that this year.
Right.
And then again, timing is everything. Having this happen during spring break, March, April, May, and then of course June, obviously really big months for tourism for us, but all of Memphis. So it's definitely hurt. But we've been with really good leadership from our executives, from our board, and also just being, we had a good year, and we're pretty good with money. At least we like to think so, and we haven't had to lay anybody off. We did receive some PPP funding from the federal government, from the Small Business Administration, but overall we've been able to keep everybody on board, and so it's exciting to bring them back to work over the last couple of weeks.
What sort of, I mean, it's a silly question, but I'll ask it anyway. I mean, what is your guess in terms of the number of people who will come visit?
So it's really hard to tell. I mean, for us, it's not just the tourists through the front door. It's everything else that we do too that makes us really unique. So that's all of our 30 to 40 nights and afternoons of free programming that we do every year. All the live and Studio A concerts, the lectures, the films, all of that we do. That's on hold for the foreseeable future,
right?
Until we adjust to see how many people we can get into a space and when people are comfortable to do those things again. Our school tour program, which caters, I wouldn't say exclusively to Shelby County students, but predominantly Shelby County students, that's also on pause, as CDC recommendations are for schools not to allow field trips this next school year. And so we're going to see a drop there. We're going to see a drop in bus trips and senior bus trips that come through the city that visit all of our locations here. So, I mean, we're thinking right now, at a 50%, I think it's probably, and that's, I think that kind of the industry standard right now, but I think we're hoping to see a recovery, later part of this year. October is going to be a huge month in Memphis, with Barbecue Fest moving, with Beale Street Music Festival moving. And so if things are better in October, that's where I'm hoping we start to see it really turn around.
And you mentioned the various live events you do, whether it's performances, lectures. Are you going to start those back up as well?
So we're not doing anything program-wise in person until at least October 1st. We'll reevaluate at that point. Working with the Music Academy right now to try to figure out a way to facilitate some online, some streaming performances, which is something we were getting ready to work on anyway, as we entered the 20th anniversary of SMA.
So the Soulsville, for those not as familiar, or maybe only familiar with part, I mean, Stax Soulsville is essentially 3 entities. It is the museum, the Stax Museum of American Soul, which you are executive director of. It is the Soulsville Charter School, which is a K through 12, right? Or is it?
Charter School 6 through 12.
6 through 12, excuse me.
Yep.
And then the Stax Music Academy, which you just mentioned. I often, and I'm, relatively informed, but not entirely informed. The academy is separate from the school. There may be crossover, right? I mean, somebody might go to the school and be part of the academy, but the academy is a separate thing. So talk a little bit about that and who's involved with the academy and the live performances you're planning.
Sure. So the Music Academy is an after-school music performance program. Full-on soul funk explosion ensemble to jazz vocal ensemble. Really rigorous in training and practicing, but also, the staff and the faculty take really excellent and wonderful care of the students, really helping them through, teenage years are tough. And so everything from, things going on at home to relationships to what's going on in the world, these kids are incredibly well informed and really care about their city, care about the community. And so our staff does a great job working with them to expose them to really what's going on in the world, and also just interesting things to read, watch, speakers, and that sort of thing. And then of course that group has performed all over the world, and we're celebrating celebrating the Academy's 20th anniversary, and had a slew of great events that we had to postpone, just like everybody else. The Soulsville Charter School started in 2005. That's a grade 6 through 12 public charter school. closely aligned with Shelby County school system, but has its own board independent from us. A college preparatory academy, really turning out some amazing young men and women we try to put them on their post-secondary pathway of their choosing. So whether that's the military, TCAT for cosmetology, or a full scholarship to an Ivy, or a large public university, these kids have done some remarkable things. And with both the academy and the school, really what heartens me, and I think what heartens a lot of our staff, is the amount of students that come back and give back and still stay involved in their communities.
And the academy, they're all junior high and high school kids, right?
Yes, also grade 6 through 12.
And they are the ones, some people may be familiar, they were on Ellen, back in, it sounds like a million years ago, but it was last winter.
EP, before pandemic, right?
Yes, right. And Justin Timberlake came in and did a day or two of working with kids from the academy and stuff. So it's really remarkable. In terms of coming back, you talked about working with the city and getting clarification. Is there any one thing or things that you look at and you just think, gosh, I wish we didn't have to do that? Now, I mean, obviously, and I mean that within the context of there being a pandemic. I don't mean I wish there was no pandemic. We all wish that. But is there anything you just can't do that you really wish you could right now in this as you go?
I think the big thing for us is, we are an older museum and we've been around since 2003. Still a great place, still great exhibits. We've added some technology where appropriate. Thankfully, though, we're not technology dependent, so we don't have dozens of touch screens to clean. We don't. Oh
my gosh, I hadn't thought about that. My Lord.
Graceland, has the John Stamos tour. Rock and Soul has headphones and audio guides and stuff. And thankfully, those are very effective devices, but we just haven't had those. This is one of those moments where I'm glad we don't. But the big thing for us, and the thing that I think we're all going to miss, are school tours and public programs.
Right.
It's just, we hope that school tours will come back. We might get some students, obviously, from outside of Memphis, but we've spent the last 2 years, our director of education, Kimberly Hooper Taylor, just building this school tour program that, again, doesn't exclusively cater to Shelby County students, but we pushed so hard to get schools to come here. And we love seeing them here, and students from all over the county and the region too, Northwest Mississippi and Eastern Arkansas. Yeah. And then public programming as well. We're such a, it sounds cheesy or cliche to say, but we've really developed the family in a lot of ways. We see a lot of the same folks that come to our programs all the time. It heartens us to build the community that we have. A lot of places do live music. Of course, we do it different. We tie, everything is sort of rooted in Stax history. There's always an interpretive element to the music that we do. There's a storytelling element. We've been celebrating these wonderful artifacts that we brought in over the last few years, from Jim Stewart's fiddle to Bobby Manuel's guitar, Skip Pitts' guitar, Harold Bean's guitar, who just passed away, and Mickey Gregory's trumpet, and having a Floyd Newman saxophone, and having events around these artifacts that we've brought in to do some storytelling around, to do some interviews, and then using current Memphis talent along with some past Memphis musicians and putting on these great one-of-a-kind concerts. So even just talking about them makes my stomach hurt a little bit. It's just it's something that we really miss. We enjoy putting them on, and obviously we'll do them again. It will come back, but I think it's weird to be in May and not be planning my October, November calendar. I think that's a very strange thing for us.
I'm a big music fan. I go to a lot of shows here and elsewhere, and I think one of the last shows I went to was Booker T at Crosstown, and the Stax Music Academy kids came out and played before.
They opened for him. Yep.
They opened, and it was remarkable. And listening to you talk, I also am more. It's a small price to pay, but it's a huge price, right? There's a huge human interaction and cultural price that we are rightly paying. I'm not arguing against that, but it's no small thing.
Yeah, and that's the thing that pains my soul about the great venues we have in this city. DKDC, Minglewood, Young Avenue,
Orpheum.
All these great places that aren't going to be able to have shows, and that's all over the country. And those places don't work. People don't make money unless those shows happen. So hopefully we can figure out a way to do it, because our Memphis musicians, need places to play too, and they've been very resourceful. And And that's the other part too, is that we've been such an important part of the Memphis music community for the past few years, and providing a venue, a paid venue for folks to ply their trade. And we miss that as well. We miss part of being that ecosystem too.
Right. I want to come back to some of those themes, but let me do a quick break here to remind everyone that this podcast is brought to you by FedEx. Possibilities, what we deliver by delivering. The Extra Podcast is one of many weekly podcasts we do at the Daily Memphian, including the Behind the Headlines podcast that Jennifer Biggs does on food. Bill Dries does a podcast on politics. In normal times, we have a number of sports podcasts. We've gotten away from those, obviously, but we'll get back to them. All of them are on the site. They're on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. It is an interesting thing. I mean, for people who are maybe who don't know how musicians make money, forget the big high-end people, like just the working musicians of more renown than I think many people might think, that so much of their income is shifted to live performances away from, since the rise of streaming services, I just mentioned iTunes and Spotify and Google Play, have been a real hit to the income for all kinds of musicians, particularly ones who are sort of scratching out a living. And the money they make at a venue like a Stax or a DKDC is critically important to their livelihood. And because so much has been lost in terms of record sales, CD sales, tape sales, and so on and so forth. We've got construction. We've got construction.
Okay.
This is the thing with a live podcast or video if you're watching on video. Somebody will probably walk in my office next. We'll just have a complete breakdown.
Right. They're just passing through with the cart.
Social order here. But again, talk more about that. I mean, that's just it's a pressing issue from a pure economic point of view.
So for us, it's actually twofold. June is typically when we host the Stax Music Academy Alumni Band, which are almost all recent graduates of the Stax Music Academy in Memphis area high schools, most of whom are home for the summer from college, and it's their summer job. Not only do they play at our place on Tuesday afternoons, but they also had 2 weekly gigs in town. In the past, it's been at BB King's on Beale Street. That's not happening this year for the 8 to 10 alumni that typically play those gigs. So that's a summer job that they're going to have to find. For us, it's live in Studio A in July, which this year I think we would have had, I think there's 4, I can't remember if there's 4 or 5 Tuesdays in July this year, or 4 or 5 in June. But that's, again, those are local bands that we've contracted with and asked to come perform, and really they put on a great show, and it's a great way to expose their music to not just the Memphians that come in, because we're free on Tuesday afternoons, but to tourists from all over the world. And so some of them sell merch, but everybody's got a Facebook page, everybody's got an Instagram page. It's really good exposure that they're also missing out on as well. And then for us, it's just those seasonal live shows that we do. It's the opportunity for the Stax Music Academy to bring in musicians to do workshops with the students too. And all of that's going to come back. It's just, but it's the part that pains me right now, because that's the stuff where and we've developed a really good relationship, with these folks, and they're so passionate. I mean, the current Memphis musicians, outside of their talent, are so dedicated to uplifting the legacy of Stax and to continuing to not to grow the legacy and to add to it, and not just play cover songs. They're inspired by so much of the stuff that came in the past, but now expanding on it. And so it's a really exciting time in Memphis music right now, and it's too bad that we sort of had to press pause on it for the time being.
Yeah. Talk for a minute about the sort of symbiotic relationship you mentioned early on. Watching what Graceland is doing, and that notion of a museum is a museum, but it's also a business, right? I mean, it's got to have people and attendees, and it generates its revenue that way to support its mission. How much coordination is there now and in normal times between the other music sort of destinations in Memphis, Sun City? Yeah, sorry.
So I mean, we're kind of at the intersection of kind of both communities, both the sort of the Memphis Museum community and the Memphis music tourism community. We work well with all of the music tourism groups. So Sun, Graceland, Rock and Soul, Memphis Music Hall of Fame. But then we also have really great working relationships with Civil Rights Museum, Brooks, Pink Palace, for one reason or another. So, I think that's the part is, the Metal Museum, everybody's been in contact. Arts Memphis has done a really fantastic job of kind of being a hub for facilitating conversations between all of us, both at a CEO level with our CEO, Richard Greenwald, and folks in the arts community, but also museum directors and museum staff too, to kind of share ideas, talk about reopening plans, schedules, best practices, all those kinds of things. And so that's been really good. And again, we obviously every museum, every small business like us wants to grow. But we also, understand our niche too. I really feel like we've kind of settled into this really wonderful groove of again, knock on wood, predictability of where we could think about where, our earned income for the year, and we could predict and we could budget wisely and really do some good medium to long range planning based on what we thought we were going to do because of our location in a city where there are huge anchor institutions like Graceland, like the Memphis Zoo, like the National Civil Rights Museum. We succeed. If they succeed, we succeed. And Sun Studio is the same thing. So, that's why I think it's great that everybody is communicating. Everybody's got their own kind of little different path to coming back. Ours is a little bit longer of a runway than others, but I think our staff's really comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with it. Our board's comfortable with it too. And it will give us a chance to kind of talk to everybody to see what things went right. And it sounds like, anecdotally over the weekend, there were some folks in town, which is great to hear. Obviously not to a typical Memorial Day in Memphis, Tennessee, but there were folks in town. So that's good. The folks at Memphis Tourism do a great job keeping us informed of trends and social media, lodging, other travel things, but also just what their plans are and where they think the guests are going to come from this year. Yeah. And so that's been very helpful too, because that helps us sort of what limited resources we do have for marketing. It allows us to pinpoint how best to use those resources.
One more, you mentioned Civil Rights Museum, and Terry Freeman, the head of the Civil Rights Museum, was on 2 weeks ago or something and talking about a lot of what we're talking about, reopening. And, there are similarities, as you articulated, between the cultural institutions as destinations, and then everyone has their separate mission. But, Stax, as sort of honoring and celebrating the Stax legacy, it's very much the story of African Americans in Memphis and nationally, right? I mean, it's a big part of the story. If people haven't been to the Stax Museum, one, you need to go, because it really is so interesting and fascinating above and beyond the music. But it gets into the civil rights era and so on and so forth. Are you, and the neighborhood you're located in, all of it is very much a part of the African American experience in Memphis. Mm-hmm. And is the African American community, and Terry articulated this much better than I will, has been hit harder nationally, it looks like, in Memphis. It's been a harder hit group. Are you that much more cognizant of the risks because of that part of the mission of the Stax Museum?
Yeah, I think so. And, I think it's, it's one of those things where we feel like we're good members of this community, both, countywide, citywide, and here in our neighborhood, in the Soulsville, USA neighborhood. Memphis Slim House, and us, and along with Mid-South Food Bank, put together several food pickups in our parking lot. Those went incredibly well. Started off with folks in the neighborhood, but and Memphis musicians, but expanded beyond that. And they were wonderful events. And obviously, in a time of great need, it's wonderful to be able to serve like that. But yeah, I think it is. We are aware of those things, and I think that's it's such a substantial part of our constituency, and such a substantial part of not just our constituency in visiting the museum, but for the school and the music academy as well. And so many of our students come from South Memphis and South City and Whitehaven and really throughout the region, not just in South Memphis and headed down towards the border. But I think it's something that we all are aware of, and we've talked about extensively internally.
Yeah. We are coming up on the end of our time, but again, to say again when you're thinking that you're moving towards opening, was it mid-June?
So barring something unforeseen, it will be June 18th. So we're going to do the last 2 weekends in June sort of as our test and tune. And then if everything goes well and we feel comfortable opening back up fully, we'll be open back to regular hours July 1st.
All right. Well, good luck with that. I appreciate
Thank
you
you.
taking some time in the middle of this changes in the space. But I really do appreciate you coming on. So thanks, Jeff.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Eric.
Absolutely. And that is all the time we have today. A reminder that this podcast is brought to you by FedEx. Possibilities, what we deliver by delivering. Be sure to subscribe to the Daily Memphian on the site. Follow me on Twitter at Eric Barnes2 or follow us at Daily Memphian. And you can subscribe to this weekly podcast as well as the Behind the Headline podcast, Bill Drees' Politics podcast, Jennifer Biggs' Food podcast, or when we get back to it, the Sports podcast. They're on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts.